That makes sense, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah, she's new. Well, the chair recognizes the distinguished gentlewoman from New York, and we're prepared to receive your testimony, Ms. McCarthy.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you allowing me to testify today in support of including necessary funding in the fiscal year 2009 budget resolution under the Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing Services to implement H.R. 2640, the NICS Improvement Amendments Act of 2007, Public Law 110-180. H.R. 2640 was signed into law by the President on January 8, 2008, after having passed both the House and the Senate unanimously. I know the budget is tight, Mr. Chairman, but fully funding this program is so important because currently the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or the NICS, is deeply flawed. NICS is a national database system that flags individuals precluded under current law from purchasing and possessing firearms. Millions of criminal records are currently missing from the database that makes up NICS due to funding restrictions and technology issues at the state level. Many states have not automated individual records concerning mental illness, restraining orders, or misdemeanor convictions for domestic violence. Simply put, NICS must be updated on the state level so that it can properly function on the federal level. This point is underscored by the circumstances, unfortunately, surrounding the shootings of Virginia Tech in April of last year. The shooter in the Virginia Tech massacre was prohibited from legally purchasing a firearm. Unfortunately, flaws in the NICS system allowed his record to slip through the cracks, and he was able to purchase 2 handguns and use them to brutally murder 32 individuals. He passed a Brady background check because NICS did not have the necessary information. Sadly, the same scenario happens every day across this nation. The NICS Improvement Amendments Act requires all states to provide NICS with the relevant records needed to conduct effective background checks. It's the state's responsibility to ensure this information is currently inaccurate. They must update their records to ensure violent criminals do not have access to firearms, and then they must share their information with NICS. However, I recognize many state budgets are already overburdened. This law disputes grants in states to update their records and provide those records to NICS. States will receive the funds they need to make sure relevant records are up to date. While NICS has flaws, the NICS Improvement Amendment Act of 2007 corrects the primary flaw and will prevent thousands of individuals precluded from purchasing firearms from doing so. Approximately 916,000 individuals were precluded from purchasing a firearm for failing a background check between November 30th, 1998, when NICS began operating, and December 31st, 2004. During the same period, nearly 49 million background checks were processed through NICS. These numbers provide that NICS works and will continue to work. However, since NICS is only as good as the information it contains, we must ensure that NICS has the most up-to-date records to stop criminals, those adjudicated as mentally ill, and those under a restraining order from purchasing firearms. It has been estimated that more than 40 million records are still missing from the various databases that makes up NICS. By providing this funding, we will move one step closer to bringing the records of millions of barred individuals into NICS. This law imposes no new restrictions on gun owners and does not infringe on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. It simply makes improvements to a program that saves lives. The NRA and I worked very hard on this. We actually passed it in 2002. Unfortunately, the Senate never took it up, but after Virginia Tech, we were able to pass it on both areas. I respectfully request that you include $187.5 million to the fiscal year 2009 budget resolution under the Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing Services in order to fully fund the NICS Improvement Amendments Act of 2007. I thank you for your time, and I'd be more than willing to answer any questions.
Well, the gentlelady speaks to this matter with knowledge and authority that is not possessed by any other member of Congress. And we appreciate you coming here and raising these matters with the Budget Committee, and I think we can say with confidence that they will be certainly considered and noted, and as we work through this budget, hopefully we'll get some of these problems worked out. But we thank you very much for being willing to do this and appreciate all your efforts.
And I thank you for your time, sir. Thank you.
Turn on my speaker here. The next member to testify is Mr. Altmeyer from Pennsylvania. Welcome. And we're pleased to receive your testimony. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the support of the members of the committee for the opportunity to testify today on the importance of the fiscal year 2009 budget resolution and specifically its impact on Western Pennsylvania. Over the past 7 years, President Bush has time and again sent budget proposals to Congress that fail to address the needs of our country, and these irresponsible budgets have led to record deficits and an economy that is, to say the least, unstable. With one last opportunity to address the fiscal turmoil created during his administration, I had hoped the President would submit to Congress a budget that prioritizes America and finally puts this country on a path to recovery, but unfortunately, this was not the case. The President's fiscal year 2009 budget proposal once again rejects the will of the American people, cuts funding for critical domestic programs, and goes far to attempt, and even goes as far as to attempt to balance the budget on the backs of our nation's veterans. Simply said, I find the President's budget plan unacceptable, and I urge the committee to reject many of its proposals and instead work in a bipartisan manner to develop a fiscally responsible budget. As you and the committee prepare the fiscal year 2009 budget resolution, I urge you to pay tribute to the sacrifices made by our nation's veterans by once again fully funding their medical care and coverage. Last year, Congress answered this call by providing a record $13 billion of funding for the VA, meeting for the first time the recommendations put forth by the independent budget. I hope that we can again continue this tradition and pass a budget resolution that contains a substantial increase in veterans funding. Unfortunately, the President disagrees and would rather shortchange our nation's veterans. When adjusted for inflation, his 2009 budget requests only a 0.6% increase over FY08 levels. This is regarded as beyond inadequate by every major veterans organization, especially considering that over 100,000 new veterans will seek treatment this year from the VA. Furthermore, the President's budget calls on fee and co-payment increases of $5.2 billion on veterans' medical care. If enacted, these increases would almost double the cost of prescriptions and impose an enrollment fee of up to $750 per year. It is predicted that the fee increases would cause almost 200,000 veterans to leave the VA healthcare system. Most disappointing is the fact that the President's plan would not even reinvest these additional funds in veterans' health care. Madam Chair, on behalf of the over 60,000 veterans residing in my district, many of whom already struggle with access to their benefits, I again ask that you set aside the President's misguided recommendations and pass a budget that prioritizes the needs of veterans and ensures they have access to every benefit they deserve. When it comes time for Congress to make federal funding decisions, there is absolutely no group that should stand ahead of our nation's veterans. The Bush budget also reneges on America's promise to care for its senior citizens and cuts Medicare by $556 billion over 10 years. This proposal is far too severe. It could limit seniors' access to their doctors and make it harder for our hospitals to provide patients with quality care. With 124,000 Medicare beneficiaries in my district alone, I take any change to the program seriously and believe that it's the wrong path for us to take as the baby boomers begin to retire. Most of the cuts are to hospitals and other medical providers, but remarkably, $26 billion comes from increased premiums to beneficiaries. Hospitals in my district estimate a total 5-year impact of over $125 million. Let me just cite a few to give you an idea of what this means. A $14 million cut to the Alakiski Medical Center in Natrona Heights, a $15 million cut to Jameson Hospital in Newcastle, and a $29 million cut to the Heritage Valley Medical Center in Beaver, Pennsylvania. These are not small, insignificant amounts to local hospitals. We can do a better job to reform Medicare and ensure its solvency than by simply slashing reimbursement to hospitals and other providers and increasing premiums on seniors. The President's budget also calls for a $570 million cut to LIHEAP, which would reduce LIHEAP's funding to the 2001 level. In Pennsylvania, LIHEAP provides 285,000 low-income households with the money necessary to pay their heating bills in the winter. This money goes primarily to households with young children, senior citizens, or disabled individuals. At a time when home heating costs are increasing dramatically by 80% since 2001, I find it unconscionable that the President has proposed these cuts. Lastly, the President's budget nearly eliminates the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the MEP. The MEP funding is critical to making small and medium-sized manufacturers more productive and competitive. Those funds are used to connect these manufacturers with cutting-edge technology, train workers, streamline the process, and assist with production innovation. In 2006 alone, MEP helped manufacturers save $1.3 billion and create or retain 53,000 jobs. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to address the committee today to outline my priorities for the fiscal year 2009 budget. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and I yield back my time.
Thank you so much for taking your time to testify about these very important issues. I just have a couple of questions. When you are talking about veterans and talking about 100,000 new veterans into the system and the increase in the budget, in the President's budget, what would it take, do you think, or do you have an estimate just to keep up with medical inflation. I mean, we have inflation, we have medical inflation, and we have new people coming into the system. We don't have that many people, I don't believe, leaving the system. Do you have any idea what just medical inflation would be?
Yeah, I thank the chair for the question. The president's budget has a 0.6% increase. There is nobody who thinks that medical inflation is going to be 0.6% this year. It's going to be more along the lines of 10%. Medical inflation is often 2 and 3 times above the rate of inflation for consumer goods. With veterans, they have unique health needs. They often need greater degrees of health care than other members of the population that are their age. So it affects them even more than the general population. So to think that a 0.6 increase in the president's budget is going to result in better care for veterans is simply not the case.
Do you think it also takes into account the amount of help that a lot of our veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan where they need mental health? Do you think this begins to cover that?
Mental health is a huge portion of the issue, certainly post-traumatic stress disorder. Issues like traumatic brain injury, even mild cases, have enormous costs associated with treating them. And of course, unfortunately, we've had 25,000 to 30,000 veterans that have been injured in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Very often, these are young people, 19, 20 years old, that are going to need health care for the rest of their lives. They're very seriously injured, and the cost of care is just incalculable over their lifetime. So we need to keep up with that, and this Congress did great work last year with a $13 billion increase in VA health care funding, and I'm asking the committee to consider that level of funding increase again this year.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate you taking the time and bringing up these very important issues. Thank you. Next, we have testifying Representative Bruce Braley from Iowa. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I want to thank Chairman Spratt and Ranking Member Ryan for inviting me here to testify before the committee today, and I want to thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for holding this and presiding over this important hearing. And I want to start my remarks by representing to you that this is probably going to be the same song's second verse.
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity to share my concerns about the impact of the President's fiscal year 2009 budget and the impact that it will have specifically on our nation's veterans, and to also express my strong views that we in Congress must do everything we can to ensure that we are sufficiently funding the Veterans Administration and properly caring for our troops, our veterans, and their families both now and in the future. It was just about a year ago today, Madam Chairwoman, that I, like most Americans, was shocked and outraged to learn about the horrific living conditions, neglect, and bureaucratic hurdles that our veterans were experiencing at Building 18 at Walter Reed Medical Center. It was about a year ago that we learned that these problems were not just confined to Walter Reed, but were widespread and systemic throughout the military and veterans' health care systems. And it was just a year ago that President Bush went to Walter Reed, apologized to wounded soldiers, and promised to, quote, fix the problem. The scandal at Walter Reed served as a wake-up call that we as a country need to be doing much more to provide for our veterans who have sacrificed so much for us. Republicans and Democrats alike agreed that we needed to make significant and new investments in the VA. There was consensus that we needed to comprehensively change and improve veterans' health care and benefits system so that veterans would never again have to face the mistreatment that so many experienced at Walter Reed and other VA facilities throughout the country. I thought that everyone, including President Bush, also understood that, quote, fixing the problem would require long-term investments and efforts, especially with the large number of veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan with severe mental and physical injuries, as my colleague Mr. Altmaier just referred to. That's why I was so surprised and disappointed when I learned that the President's fiscal year 2009 budget would inexplicably cut VA funding by billions of dollars in coming years. His budget would reduce funding for medical and prosthetic research critical to the large number of veterans returning home with amputated limbs and mental injuries like post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury by millions of dollars. And as I've mentioned on multiple occasions, Madam Chairwoman, we're talking about the hidden injuries of this war. People who can walk on the street and people in the public do not perceive that they have had critical and life-threatening injuries simply because of the nature of post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injuries. The President's budget would cut overall veterans funding by an astounding $20 billion between 2009 and 2013 and would also increase health care fees and pharmacy co-pays for veterans. And Madam Chairwoman, when we have had repeated oversight and reform hearings on the problems at Walter Reed and the problems with our DOD and VA healthcare delivery systems, I have frequently referred to the hidden costs of this war, which my friend Mr. Altmaier just referred to. If you take a young man, because most of these people are young men, 19 years of age, and you go to the life expectancy tables for a 19-year-old, you'll find out that they are projected to live 55 years beyond their current age. And when you amortize the cost of treating amputations, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injuries over that life expectancy, we're talking about millions of dollars per patient. And at a time when our healthcare system is in crisis, and we're looking at ways of providing funding to people outside the military and VA system, we know that the more we invest in giving them the best chance at success and getting back to normal function, the less we as a society will pay long term in caring for them in outside healthcare delivery systems. And that's why this budget cut is so significant, because it's a complete disservice to our veterans, our soldiers who are returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, and it will end up in a long-term burden to the taxpayers of this country. These proposed deep cuts to veteran services and health care and increases in health care fees are irresponsible and unacceptable. The cuts to prosthetic and mental health research threaten to deny our veterans the high quality of care they deserve, not only when they first return home, but throughout their lifetime. And I have talked repeatedly about a constituent of mine, Dennis Clark, who runs a prosthetic company in Waterloo, Iowa, and during the first part of the Iraq War came out to Walter Reed on his own dime every week to provide volunteer prosthetic services. Those are the types of sacrifices that people are making, and we as a country need to share in that sacrifice. I see that my time is up, and so I will be happy to answer any questions.
Do you think we fixed the problem at Walter Reed?
No. One of the biggest crises at Walter Reed was not the living conditions at Building 18. When we held the first hearing immediately in the aftermath of the Building 18 disclosure, what we learned is that the bigger problem was the complete dysfunction of the VA and DOD disability systems. And people who were being warehoused at Walter Reed while waiting for a determination of whether they were going to be cleared under DOD guidelines to return to active duty, and if not, whether they would then be kicked into the VA healthcare system. And one of the great problems that we've had is that if you have the same injury and are seeking disability benefits under the VA compensation system, you may get a 70% impairment rating, while under the DOD disability system with the exact same injuries, you may get a 40% impairment rating, resulting in substantially different compensation to the same wounded warrior. And this has led to an incredible backlog in our disability claims processing, and one of the purposes of those hearings and the report and the legislation that we have passed is to try to reduce the backlog. But all the evidence we're hearing from people who are involved in processing those claims and from advocates on behalf of those injured veterans is that none of this has made a significant impact in addressing the backlog. We need more ombudsman people who are advocating outside. We need more advocates who are advocating solely for the disabled veterans and wounded warriors. And until those problems get addressed, we will do nothing to seriously impact this backlog of disability claims.
How do you think the transition has been between the DOD and the Veterans Department? Is that a smooth transition when a veteran, I mean, when somebody comes back from war and all of a sudden now they are leaving the service and they're a veteran, or they're not on active duty? What kind of transition are they facing?
It's been a huge obstacle to the orderly transition of a returning wounded warrior into a VA healthcare system, because it's like the problems that were identified in the 9/11 Commission report, a problem called interoperability, which is the inability of conflicting and sometimes competing agencies to share information with each other. Sometimes they don't use the same type of software to manage patient records. Sometimes they don't use the same type of information to communicate back and forth and make sure that those claims are being transferred in a timely manner. And I think in the report that Togo West Group, General Togo West Group prepared, that was one of the critical factors they identified. There's a lot of work needs to be done, and without the funding to make it happen, none of the concerns that were raised will ever be sufficiently resolved.
Thank you so much for appearing today and your testimony, and this committee, I know, will take up that issue and look at that very closely about what is fair and appropriate for our veterans. They really have given their all, and we need to make sure that we keep our promises to them. So thank you very much. At this time, we are in recess, and I believe there's a vote going on.